Welcome back to The Science of Wellness. Today I'm joined by Leonard Rinser, a health entrepreneur and longevity advocate building science-driven ventures at the intersection of technology, prevention, and design. He's the founder of GLAICE Health, a platform reshaping diabetes care through personalized insights and clinically grounded guidance. And he's also a mentor to global accelerators like Plug and Play and Sigma Squared. In this episode, we explore what it means to create sustainable health, not just in systems, but also in our everyday life. From Leo's own longevity experiments and routines to his work with research institutions and his philosophy behind the art of health, this is a conversation about turning bold ideas into real world change. Welcome to the Science of Wellness, Leo.
Thank you so much for the invite, Erna, and I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
Great. Well, let's jump straight into it. So, I start every episode with this question: what does wellness mean to you personally, and how has your definition evolved over time?
That's a super interesting question. I think for me, wellness means something truly holistic. So it's something about feeling mentally, physically, emotionally, also on a spiritual level and intellectual healthy and fulfilled. And this is how I would define wellness for me. And I think it's a state where I would say that I'm completely aligned with what I do. I'm energized and I just know what I want to do because, like, wellness goes for me beyond just feeling healthy, but also in the space of feeling fulfilled. And I think this is how I would describe my statement on wellness. And it's more about also sustainability in health. So it's not like, hey, I take a pill or I do one thing to feel a bit more healthy, but really a holistic approach where I think, hey, what do I need on a mental level? What do I need on a physical level to feel healthy and happy? And I think that's in the end my main thing, because like bringing joy and happiness is the most important thing, and it completely aligns with feeling wellness.
I love that you mentioned about you want to feel energized, because I think as
Mhm.
soon as we think about anything where we put our energy in our daily lives and where we spend our energy, that
Mhm.
is also what wellness comes back to. But you also mentioned now about sustainable health. So, how is that different from traditional wellness or healthcare? And what would it look like if society really started to embrace it?
Mm. I think like sustainable health is my main topic where I talk about, because in general, I think our entire world has a very reactive approach to health. And we are good when it comes to emergency situations, but we are definitely by far not good when it comes to prevention. And we are lacking so many things when it comes to prevention and thinking about prevention in the right way. And we focus too much on managing and treating diseases and not preventing diseases. Of course, I work in diabetes. There are, of course, autoimmune diseases where it's super, super important. And we also definitely need emergency healthcare. But we in our society build systems that are only focused on emergency healthcare. And we see this in our entire society when we look at the health state of all humans living in the world, that it's getting worse and worse. And this is where I came in and had the idea of, hey, we are talking a lot about sustainability in general. We need sustainability when we approach health. And this is also what I'm driving forward with the art of health, to make sure that we not only are fixing problems, but we are preventing them from arising. And I think this is one of the most important things. And we have the ecosystem that enables it. We need a lot of education, focus more on education and how to approach health in the best way possible. And I think then we can definitely manage it. But for that, we need to educate people with the right information so they can make informed decisions and they first understand what health truly means. And next to that, I think what's very important here too is to make people enjoy health. Because I never knew a person who's super healthy and says, like, okay, I will not focus on my health in the next week and the next month. Everyone who experienced how it feels to feel healthy and fulfilled is always making sure that this is the number one priority. And this is the thing where I think we need more sustainable health this is how how we need to change our entire perspective, how we need to change our systems, and that we reward people that are taking care about their health, and that those people that cannot take care about their health proactively, that we support them with the right resources and the right information. Because the people who are not healthy, they don't want to be unhealthy. They just don't have the ability or the knowledge to be healthy. And if we empower them, I think everyone will be way more happier and enjoy life more. And that's what I really believe and what I want to drive forward.
That is a great belief. But now I just want to go back a bit on your journey specifically. Now,
Mhm.
what I saw about you is that your journey spans everything from rock bands, ice hockey, and now you're in health tech and longevity ventures. So, what lit the spark for you to build solutions in healthcare specifically?
That's a funny question, and it started in the ninth grade. Like when we had like biology, we examined the human heart, and for me it was super interesting. I was never the best guy in school, and that was the moment where I was by far the best. And that was the moment where mom realized, oh wow, he's super interested in learning and doing all the stuff. My mom was always doing stuff in healthcare, and I grabbed all her books and read through it and learned all the names and everything I could. And that was the moment where I also realized, yeah, health is the thing that I wanted to do. And I knew that I will not become a doctor, because I don't like to see blood, but also because I would say I'm more the type of person that would be called a builder. So I build a lot of things. And that was pretty yeah, clear to me. Then biology was of course interesting, but I couldn't imagine what I should do if I study biology. So I was like, hey, I will do stuff with product development, but focusing 100% on healthcare. And that's what I did then. Yeah, my rock band career is just something that I really enjoyed. In school, I was more interested in rock music and making music than in studying. And I think this also shapes my approach to healthcare, because I think we need a bit more rock and roll in healthcare. And healthcare is sometimes we need to shake up the processes that are there to create new ones. And I learned also while founding the company that those systems, yeah, they are in place due to certain things that also make sense, but we can use those systems and also apply our solution to those systems, but still challenge it and try to find better ones. But only challenging the system and building something completely different is also probably not the right way. That's definitely what I learned. I think that's what I experienced. That was what brought me in. So I'm more the builder that wants to innovate healthcare through building, and also a bit more and more changing the system through bringing the right people together and making the right and important conversations happening.
You mentioned a few minutes back about the art of health. Now, how does this tie into your vision for the future of longevity and prevention?
I think in general, like I already said, it's for me important to drive health in the right direction. And it's very important to make health less reactive and more proactive, and more towards empowering people to make the right decisions and take their hand into their own health, their health into their own hands. I think that's something that's truly important to me. There are so many opportunities you can do, like giving just insights on what is happening, breaking science down, because not everyone is able to understand the most recent clinical trials or scientific studies that are done, or also making sure that people understand why it's important to use variables and understand and interpret variable data. So I know a lot of people who heard of the heart rate, but only very few people that know what the resting heart rate does, or what the heart rate variability does, and how we can influence them to, for example, increase the heart rate variability or to lower the resting heart rate. And I think that's the idea also behind it, to make it accessible and understandable for everyone. And the idea behind it is to bring together the driving experts also. So it's not only me who's writing the stuff and thinking like, hey, what can we do? But I'm also working with, yeah, a lot of experts there. When it comes, the Art of Health is the umbrella brand. Under the umbrella brand, we also have Healthcare Minutes, where, for example, I bring together the C-level of world-leading pharma and medtech companies, from politicians, from millionaires and billionaires investing in healthcare, to tell them, hey, what is the thing where we should truly work on, and how can we truly change the system that everyone benefits from it. And for me, art of health is also something that's going or leading to a future where health feels, I would say, yeah, beautiful and not clinical every time, and where prevention maybe is also an aspiration for everyone. And I think this is possible. We just need to educate people, and this is also why it's called the art of health, about the beauty of health, because health has a beauty from inside that's, yeah, that's unmatched. And that's the idea and the vision behind it, to make it accessible and also aspiring for everyone, and to inspire people to make the right decisions. And of course, doing that also by providing the right solutions, providing digital solutions that help people to better understand it, providing also solutions like nutraceuticals and supplements that help them to live a better life, providing them with recipes, for example, with nutrition as medicine, where they can understand that nutrition can be a healer and healthy can also be tasty, and helping people to really understand that nutrition is a core, that you also need to keep in mind that it's not only the magic pill that you take and everything is done, but that it's like a foundation that you set by focusing on physical activity, on nutrition, on sleep, and mental health, and sometimes even spiritual and emotional health. And then, based on that, if we have a good foundation, we can start to have a look into other things that we can optimize. And that's the idea behind the art of health. And I would say it's sometimes a bit tricky to say holistic. It's a holistic approach. It unites traditional approaches from some thousand years in the past with the most recent scientific methodologies, to make sure that we have something that uses the best out of every area and combines it in one. That's the vision behind it, and I'm about to make the first steps.
I really like that you mention it is holistic, because yes, there's companies that do amazing work with focusing on one specific aspect, let's say sleep or if it's exercise, and that's great. But what you are also doing is, to me, you are breaking down the different silos of building a health solution. And that is what's going to, I feel that is what's going to have the biggest impact in the years to come.
That's absolutely amazing. And yeah, that's the idea behind it. Literally breaking silos down and thinking holistically. Thank you for pointing that out. Yeah.
I want to pivot a little bit to GLAICE. And
Mm-hmm.
GLAICE is taking a very bold approach to diabetes because it's merging personal data, clinical guidelines, and then also digital design to empower people living with type 1 and type 2 diabetes. Now, if you look at all the other platforms, what's the core problem you are solving that existing platforms have missed?
That's a very interesting point, and I think I can point it out in one sentence, because that's what we do differently. We treat them like people and not like patients. And I think that's the difference what we do. We empower, like, for us it's never, we never talk about chronic patients. We talk about the chronic badass, which is also our brand language, and be like, hey, chronic patient is nothing what defines you. You are a chronic badass and you can do what you want. And I think this is something that people definitely want to feel, and they want to, yeah, to understand that, for example, in diabetes, it's not like, hey, you have diabetes as a disease, but hey, you have diabetes as a body that will accompany you through life, and you will need to define the relationship how you deal with diabetes. And this is the most beautiful, I would say, revelation that I had working with people with diabetes, that they are, yeah, they already have that perspective, and that they were able to let us work with them and be part of their journey. And I think this is definitely what makes the huge difference.
And to me, also, what definitely makes a difference for GLACE is that you are working with researchers and diabetologists, and you're actually working with real world usability. And it's not just something that you thought one day
Mm.
you're going to work on diabetes, you're getting the knowledge base in. But what are some of the most surprising insights you've learned from user data or clinical collaboration? And then also, how has that shaped the way you personalize care through GLACE?
Definitely. I think this is something where I can also make a connection again to the question you asked before. And this is that there is an opportunity to make sure you get the most impressive people on board to collaborate with them and develop a solution together with them. Because none of us is the best researcher in diabetes. But we also don't need to be the best researchers because we just work with the best researchers and the best institutions in the world we can find that are already there. So we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We just collaborate with the leading minds to make sure that we help them to get their knowledge and their expertise out in the world. And this is literally also the foundation of our algorithm and our working. This is based on the best research that's out there in diabetes and diabetes type 1 especially. And we just brought it into a beautiful, emotionally designed solution that made it accessible. And I think that's what makes the difference. And that's also what worked for us. That we took science and clinical data and made it understandable and accessible, and also able to access it at the right time. So it was like before that you had like papers, and of course you had all the knowledge there. But now you have a digital assistant that tells you exactly in the moment you need it what you need to do. And based on your personal data in real time, you get, hey, your glucose level look like that. Maybe consider thinking about this action and try to make sure to prevent a situation that you don't want to be in. And I think that's it. And next, regarding the collaboration, which you also asked, is I think it's simplicity wins. Like everything is so complex, and also those researchers, their work, of course, is complex, but someone needs to break it down. And also in the collaboration, it's sometimes not that easy to break down. Hey, how can we make all those complex relations easier and understandable for everyone? And what's one thing that we see is that clinical topics and everything that's health tech, med tech feels sometimes not really human. And it's very important to make sure that emotional triggers are also there. So people track just better when the interface feels human and something doesn't feel like if they open it. I don't want to take a company as an example, but there are companies out there when you open the app, you feel like this was developed 50 years ago, and it probably was also. And this needs to change. And there is a connection, and there should be a connection between emotional and warm design, and on the other side, super scientific and tech driven development. And bringing those worlds together is again something that's very important. And this is something that also reflects at the Art of Health. At the Art of Health, I'm doing the same. Like it's not that you have either or, but you need to think holistically. And those are not different worlds that can't be united, but you can unite those worlds. You can definitely make the most scientific and best technical solution also a solution that people want to love and people love to use.
I'm really glad you are emphasizing the empathy behind an app or a product. I've also seen in the past that that is usually what makes a company or a startup fail, is as soon as they miss the human aspect behind it, then
Mhm.
they lose their user base. But now, again, I want to pivot because you are involved in so many different things. You also created the Venture Readiness Management System to help health tech startups go from idea to impact. What is the biggest gaps that you see in most early stage health ventures, and how can founders close these gaps?
That's a very very big question, but also very very good question. I think in general, what most founders and innovators don't have on their radar is that just developing a good product is not enough. And also, like I told you, like it's so important to merge great technical skills and great scientific skills with emotional design so that it's approachable, but it never works if you're not integrated in the system. And too many people don't understand, and this is very specific to healthcare, but we are talking about healthcare, so I'm only going on the healthcare part and not on the general business part. But too many people don't understand how the health system works, and of course sometimes it doesn't make sense how it's built up, or it's like an old system that needs to adapt to new solutions. but it's still an old system. So you need to make sure that you use this old system and apply also to the rules. And I think that's very important, that you make sure that you understand the regulatory landscape, that you understand also different needs from different players. So if your solution is built for people, let's just take Germany, for people with diabetes, but it's not a solution where they will pay in the end, but for example, it's the health insurance that will pay, you need to understand what's important for the health insurance. And sometimes you can build the most beautiful solution, but if there is not the benefit for the payer in the end, if it's, for example, a solution where payer and user are different people, then this is doomed to fail. And I think this is in a lot of other areas and industries also the case, that it's not about building a great product, but understanding the market and navigating the market you are in. And regarding that, it's also important to have the right stakeholders, to understand the stakeholder relationships. Because if we look at healthcare and you want to, I don't know, work with a hospital, you have the doctors that are using your product in the end in the hospital, or the nurses, but above that layer you have the clinic management that needs to make sure that everything runs smooth, and also in the end the financial topics are in line. And if your solution is not aligned with them, it never works. And I think this is one of the reasons why a lot of ventures fail. And the business models are in the end the thing where this has the biggest impact. So business models need to adapt to the market, and also to what the market needs you to keep in mind. And with a venture readiness framework that was developed quite some years back now already, but it's actual still also in the age of AI. It never changed the mechanisms. It's just help founders to find a structured approach on how to get from clinical to market fit, or from tech to market fit. And there are so many things that you need to keep in mind, from a team level, from a capital level, from an industry specifics level, from a product level, from a technological level, from a market level, and even many more. And this is what the Venture Readiness Institute helps them with, to understand and navigate it.
That leads me directly into my next question. You've worked with a lot of different institutions. Now, what have you learned from sitting at the intersection of deep tech research, entrepreneurship, and then commercialization in healthcare?
I think what I definitely learned is that we have often a lot of knowledge, especially researchers have a lot of amazing knowledge. Sometimes, like, I've seen solutions, like I work with, probably over the years, I worked with way over 200 teams from deep tech space. Probably even last year, I worked with nearly 100 people in that space. And what I see, that they have amazing tech, sometimes light years ahead from what's on the market. There are definitely solutions and tech solutions that are probably 10 years further than what's already on the market. But what's lacking is that the transfer from, I have a research or a tech, maybe out of that research already a tech is developed or evolved, that needs to then translate into a product that then creates the interface to the market. And this is one of the most important things where people are lacking. And that's also what I covered also in the question before. The interface between tech and research and the market is one of the most important things. And you need to design that interface according to the user's needs. And with design, I don't mean, because if I say design, people often understand like, okay, I just need to make it beautiful. No, because design in its definition doesn't mean make things beautiful, that they look good, but design something according to the user and customer needs. So you need to go out, talk with the people, understand what they actually need, and then transfer it into an interface that creates that connection between your tech and the market need and the problem that needs to be solved. And that's, in the beginning, of course, it sounds pretty simple. It's like one thing and another thing, and you just need to create that interface. But in practice, and I learned it too, I was also struggling. And also knowing that I know the concept behind it, I was also struggling with my first venture. Exactly how can we literally create that it works out? Because this is the core thing that needs to be done. And to make it work, of course, it needs to attract the user and be like, hey, the user likes the solution. But then designing the interface between market and technology means also taking in place the customer in the end and the market that actually pays for the product. So they also need to understand if this really works out and what they need to do so they have a willingness to pay, or let's say not even only pay, but to finance that solution and building that solution out. And I think this is one of the most important, and it is researchers have a lot of knowledge, but entrepreneurs have the speed. If you're a researcher, your job is to find that 1% if you are already at 99%. And if you are entrepreneur, your challenge is more like that you don't go over the 80%, but you make sure that you better only invest 18% instead of 20% to get 80% of the entire product ready. So this is something where there is a challenge, and I've met definitely great entrepreneurs that turned into entrepreneurs from being researchers in the beginning, but a lot of people are struggling exactly on this point, from the perfectionism and the really detailed work to the 80/20 principle of, is it okay enough that it doesn't break in the first moment, but people can use it until it breaks? And this is, of course, like a mindset thing, but a lot of people are already working on it. Also, amazing programs that I was part of that were built, they do a great job, but it still takes quite some time because it's mainly about the mindset that needs to change.
Yes, and I think that is the biggest problem I'm seeing with researchers. I've taught a course on science advisory and how to get into science advisory. And one of the week's topics was exactly that, about how academics, or you coming from an academic background as a scientist or as a researcher, how can you break through that mindset of everything needs to be perfect? Because that is what we're taught as scientists. Everything needs to be perfect, from the lab to your writing to how you present. And now, all of a sudden, when you're working in the business space, it is completely different. And it took me a few years to get used to the idea of it's okay if it is 80%. Where I got the shock of my life was when I worked with a longevity science startup. And startup space is really fast. And I came directly out of a postdoc. So getting from academic to startup, and then things don't need to be perfect, they just need to work, I couldn't understand it. So it's definitely a mindset shift, and it takes a while for academics to get there. So as an entrepreneur yourself, just have a bit of patience with the researchers.
Definitely, I learned it, but absolutely, if you get to the point, I think you're definitely further than so many people are already getting, because I think it's super tricky. But if you do it, the background and the skills that you get, like, or that you learn as a researcher and a scientist, are absolutely amazing. And if someone is able to make that shift, the world is open for them.
Great. That's good news. So, Leo, you also spoke about engineering serendipity. Now, this is a concept that I find very interesting, and it's definitely a concept that many founders would love to understand. Can you unpack a bit what it means and how it's helped you build impactful ventures and global networks?
Definitely. I think engineering serendipity is also, I had the feeling always, or probably everyone had the feeling. If you have the feeling, so many things come together and then something suddenly works out and you don't know why. And for me, that was for quite a long time. I was always like, hey, I'm so lucky. This is incredible. And then I got into a community, Sigma Squared Society, where a lot of very impressive entrepreneurs are in worldwide, in over 30 or now 40 chapters already. I'm not 100% sure what the actual numbers are. All of them then talked about, like, hey, there is serendipity. And for me, serendipity was pretty new and I didn't know what serendipity actually means. And then I understood, like, okay, it's like things that a moment happens by chance that is something good. And I was like, oh, that's exactly what I was wondering the last 10 years, how we can engineer things like that and how we can create our own luck. And that was the idea, how then engineering luck created or changed into engineering serendipity. And engineering serendipity is mostly that there are few types of people that you can categorize, I would say. First of all, you have that reflective dreamer that has a very that's dreaming big, that has also great ideas how to change the world and is very idealistic about things, but this person never really does things. And then there is the person that is probably the relentless doer, that already is doing things but in the end, it's just too much, and they are like completely overwhelmed or run into bad things like even a burnout. And what again here is the thing is to find the path in between where you can connect thinking about and building freedom to yeah, have things that can evolve, and also driving things forward with intention. And engineering serendipity is just a framework that helps people in first finding the time to really settle and be like, hey, what's important for me? What do I want to drive forward? What's driving me in my entire life? And then on the other side, be like, hey, how can I now just start doing the things, but not without a plan, but with a short plan that gives me a direction? So it's more about, hey, which direction do I want to go or should I follow? And not like, I need a perfect plan with every detail until it works out. Because if you have a perfect plan, one day later, the perfect plan is done because life brought you something else and your plan doesn't work out anymore. And engineering serendipity is more about like, hey, giving you a guiding goal, like a North Star, where you think like, this is the purpose that I want to find, or that I've found, and how can I now reach that point? And over the years, I've had conversations with various people, from literally moms and dads that have been together for 40 years and are super happy, to people who sold their company for multiple 100 million, to people who are billionaires, and to people who are happily and live an amazing life, and people who are not happy and they are super rich and everyone thinks, hey, they have everything they need. And through the years, I really understood what are the mechanisms and the laws that make people happy or not. And this is what I created then and wrote it down with engineering serendipity in the 10 laws of serendipity, where you just can follow and try things to maybe engineer your own luck and find luck in sometimes things that feel like randomness. And I think what's something that's even one of the most important things in engineering serendipity is your subconsciousness and the excess of accessing the subconsciousness. And we have such a minor influence on which thoughts we can control. And then we have such a huge subconsciousness that's leading us somewhere. And accessing that is pretty simple. And with engineering serendipity, I explored it a bit and was like, what if we can think about what we want to achieve in life and which life we want to achieve? If we can break it down in 10 years goals? What if we can break down those 10 years goals and 5 years goals? And what if we can break down those goals into yearly goals, and every year revisit the goals and think, is this still the goal where I want to head towards to? And if not, we can change it. But then break those yearly goals down into monthly goals and sit every month for an hour and realize, is this really the path that I want to follow? And if yes, then break it down in weekly goals. And those weekly goals, every day I'm working on it. I at least would say I work around 1 or 2 hours on my life goals. And through the years, it's not even the work that I do that makes the biggest difference, but the biggest difference is guiding my thoughts and guiding my subconscious thoughts. That I'm literally every day, every week, and every month, I'm thinking about what's important for me in life and where do I want to go and what do I need to do to achieve it. And subconsciously, I created so many things where I ended up and was like, how did I end up in that amazing situation? And I couldn't describe it how I did it in the end, but I can clearly describe you now, after some years, that it was my subconscious mind that led me to that point, because I was thinking day in and day out about this topic and how I can achieve it, so that my mind subconsciously created a way that I was following. And I think this is something that's more like a passion project for me right now, but something that I will work on until I'm old and gray, and people will look and be like, "Oh wow, now this person is old and gray, and I can take that advice for legit and can maybe try this again." What the idea was, why I was like, "Hey, why not go out now?" and why I did it in the end was, hey, because the concept is already there. And if I'm, of course, an old, wise, wild man, then people will probably think like, okay, this fits more than if someone is doing this. But the concept will probably not change and will be the same. And this is the reason why I created it and went out. This is definitely also something that's very important for the art of health, because this is about fulfillment. And a fulfilled soul is a healthy soul, and a healthy soul is a healthy person. And so this is again where I see where the circle closes, and everything I do again, yeah, contributes to the bigger picture of how can we achieve sustainable health to be fulfilled, healthy, and happy. And the idea behind engineering serendipity came when I was like, I think it was 16 or 17 years old, when I was like, I set my purpose in life subconsciously. I didn't know that it's still my purpose, but my purpose back then was to bring people joy and happiness. And it hasn't changed until today. And I'm pretty sure it will never change.
Leo, I want to pivot again with you and go to your work with Sigma Squared and European accelerators. So, what skills or mindset or strategies do next gen health founders specifically need to thrive in the high stakes world of healthcare innovation? And I think, yeah, definitely your engineering serendipity can also come in.
Absolutely. I think, yeah, we touched a lot of the points. When it comes to Sigma Squared, it's like Sigma Squared is a place in the world where serendipity happens. I think that's one of the few places in the world where there is so much serendipity, like at very other few places in the world even happen. So I think I would say if there is an area where serendipity happens, it's mainly Sigma Squared. And when it comes to Sigma Squared, I'm more like the ecosystem player and supporter. So I'm supporting, building, and leading the global healthcare horizontal. So leading healthcare in now over 30 countries, and supporting innovators there to have the resources to build their ventures and impact people's health. But Sigma Squared is a place where everyone learns from everyone, because the people that are at Sigma Squared are so impressive that there is no one who's like, hey, everyone can learn from this one person, but literally every person that is in Sigma Squared is an amazing teacher for business and I would say life. And when it comes to other accelerators, I think the main skills should be I always use the word holistically today, but I would again use it like have a holistic perspective on business and have a perspective that's broader than only we develop the best solution and the best looking brand, but more like, hey, what do people actually need, and how does the market work, and how does the industry work? And industry specifics is one of the most important, especially when you look at healthcare, life science, and the entire biotech industry, because there are so many different stakeholders that are involved in bringing a solution to market. Is it payers, if it users, if it's research institutions, if it's regulatory bodies, if it's grant programs that make sure that sometimes they bridge financing options because it's maybe too early for institutional investors to jump in, but at the right time for non-equity free programs to jump in. And it's really tricky to navigate it. And so having that holistic perspective and zooming out of business every now and then is probably one of the most important things. And then also thinking about how can we still validate our concept as fast as possible? Because what you think in healthcare is, yeah, I need to be regular. I need to conform to all the regulations and stuff. Of course you need to. I need to have a clinical trial before I go out. Yes, sometimes you need, most times you need. And this takes you ages until you reach that point. But still, you can go out and talk to people and validate things already before you build them, because validating things will save so much time and resources and money. Because in the end, so many people build solutions and in the end, they realize, hey, there is no need for that solution. And I've witnessed that over and over again. The most impressive technical solutions that were literally 10 times better than the already existing solutions on the market. But they will never make it, and they broke also because they didn't understand how to navigate the market. They didn't understand how to make sure that you can navigate the industry specifics, understand regulations, understand which are the right cooperation partners. This is also probably a next thing that I want to add in. Understand that you don't need to do it alone. Everyone says like network is the most important thing. Of course it is, but when I started out, I was also, yeah, of course I need to build a network because everyone says it's the most important thing in life and you need it in business because otherwise you will not succeed. But in healthcare, it makes sense to also use your network and outsource things. You don't need to make everything yourself. You can get like regulatory partners. You can cooperate with universities. For example, in our clinical trial, we cooperated with 3 universities, with the Imperial College, with the university in Graz, the medical one, and the university in Bayreuth. We had another industry player, which I can't name, that was also part of that, that made it able to finance the entire thing. We had like 2 global, super huge finance, I would call it foundations, that helped us to finance the entire thing. So in the end, it was around bringing the right people together and thinking in ecosystems and how an ecosystem can support. And understanding industry specifics and ecosystems is probably one of the most important skill sets, because then you will find out if the business model works out or not. And sadly, no, not sadly, I want to correct myself. Not sadly, business models are the make and break point of companies. And even if you think your company can create the best impact, if it is not sustainable from a business perspective and the business model's perspective, it's not a good company and it will not be a very impactful company, because you will run out of money and then you will need to stop your work. And a working business model is one of the vital things that makes a company flourish. And if you don't have it, it will not work out. And lately, we see it more and more because our entire economy changed and brought back to focus on, and I think that's a very good thing, but that it brought that change to focus on things that work over time and not things that have a great story and are hyped up.
So glad you mentioned the business models, because I think also going back to the academics and the scientists and researchers, this is one thing that coming out of academia or coming out of research, this is the one thing that you don't know how to do. So it's definitely, for all the researchers, I keep on highlighting, it's something you need to learn how to do so that you can translate whatever your idea is for the bigger business community. Now I want to come back to you as a person, and you're known for not only building in the health space, but also for living what you preach. So, what does your personal health routine look like today? And how do you experiment with longevity strategies in your own life?
That's a very interesting question because I'm currently doing this in a very extreme manner. For me, there is foundation, and then there is foundation, and then there is experimentation. My foundation is clearly what's important. I am very privileged that I had like a mom that really focused on nutrition and that really made sure that I know what's good and I know how to fuel my body. And I had a dad who wanted me to be very ambitious in sports and in physical activity. Sometimes in the beginning, when I was a bit younger, that was definitely a bit harder to navigate. But now I'm pretty thankful for that, because I just know how important physical activity is and how important nutrition is. And for me, I prepare every meal. I started preparing my meals back then when I was a student to save money. And now I still prepare my meals every day, and I go to very few restaurants because I just like my food more. And I know also that it's super healthy and all the ingredients that are in there. And I created also a protocol that's also on nutrition as medicine, where I have recipes that are super easy to do, that are super healthy, and that are also tasty, because I'm a person, if food doesn't taste, I'm very fast in very bad mood. Next to that, I have my sports routine, which is probably since 6 years or 7 years, I switched to the morning. I do my workout first thing in the morning, so I wake up around 6 to 7, depending on how much sleep I need. And then I work out for 45 minutes. I do 5 minutes warm up. Then I have like push pull legs. So I have different training, different body groups, always with a calisthenics approach, so that I also train like mobility of my body, which is super important. And a lot of people ignore that part and do that every morning. And afterwards, I started doing yoga, I think like 4 years ago, and having my only 10 minutes, sometimes 15 minutes, depending on the two sessions that I do. There is only like two instructors that I really love and two videos, and I do that and switch between them. And then I meditate. Meditation is for me something that's truly, truly important. I started it also probably like 5 years ago, but I was never doing it 100% continuous, because if it was stressful, the first thing that I didn't do was meditating, which is sometimes a bit weird, because then it's exactly the point where you should meditate. And now I shifted it to the morning and to the evening. So I meditate first thing when I wake up, and I put my alarm out. I go into my meditation app and I meditate for 10 to 15 minutes. And then in the evening, the last thing before I go to sleep is meditating too. And because it's now the first thing in the morning and the last thing in the evening, I never skip it. And this is pretty interesting, because before that I did it after my workout and I skipped it so many times. And those are, yeah, the basic protocols that make sure. Of course, I track everything with variables and make sure to focus on my sleep. This was also the thing that I sacrificed everything on. Now I would definitely not sacrifice on my sleep, because I know how important it is. And with that, we have the foundation. That's working. That's already a habit that really leads me to doing the right things. And I can analyze everything. I see when I don't sleep over a longer period of time, because I never analyze only one stop insights, because this doesn't make sense, but really view my patterns. And if my patterns change, I think, hey, is there something that I changed or that I need to change? And of course, being in the diabetes space, I always monitored my glucose levels from time to time, wearing those sensors and also experimenting a lot with that. What are foods that are better for me? What are foods that bring me into my food coma, where I can't work for 1 or 2 hours after I had that meal, and optimizing it in that way. And then I started more and more with supplements, and also more experimental stuff. Like, of course, supplements, I do the basics, like omega-3, I have my vitamin D, I have my vitamin B12, I have, of course, all the stuff, magnesium, all the stuff that's very important. And the zinc is also for me a basic. And then I try to use different things, like also GABA, like L-tryptophan, to think if how they work, like a green tea extract, which works for me exactly, super interesting, because that's currently an experiment I do, or some fancy stuff like trying also NMN and see how this influences me. But also one thing at a time, so that I really understand, is this the thing that makes the difference, or is another thing making the difference? And then I'm currently trying a lot of things with red light therapy, because there is quite some interesting scientific studies behind that. This is I would say this right now is something that I'm experimenting with. And then I started to try microneedling. I think that was an experiment that afterwards, reflecting, I didn't really like, because it was horrible. It was super painful, but it was funny because I did it with three friends, and we stood all there, like, face completely red, and we were like, what are we even doing? But I would say, like, it's creating the basics first, making sure the basics work, and then trying the more experimental thing. And that's also what I see in a lot of people, where they spend, like, I have, like, I'm in groups, a lot of communities, where people spend, like, yeah, 14K for a blood transfusion, where I'm like, whew, wow. And this same person writes then, yeah, I'm currently trying to sleep better, because I'm only getting 4 hours a night. And I'm like, wow, you're spending over 10K on a treatment, but you're not in space with the basics. And I think this is also my approach. Fix the basics first, and if you have the basics, start experimenting, but also monitor your experiments. I have a blood at home lab for blood testing here, and I test here also my blood levels. I also do, like, a bigger blood testing every half a year, to make sure, is everything in line. Does it even make sense to take those supplements? And I think that's what's important. Fix the basics, and then make informed decisions based on diagnostics you make first. And after diagnostics, you can go in supplementation and trying things out and experimenting.
I'm so glad you mentioned the tests for the supplements, because else you're just wasting money and you don't really know
Absolutely.
what you need. And I'm also completely with you with the microneedling. I tried it once, never again. I'm even scared to get any injections, so I don't know why I went for microneedling. Then, Leo, I just want to ask you about how that we're looking at emerging trends in longevity and health tech. What are you watching closely right now of these trends? And then what should our listeners be paying attention to if they want to build or to future-proof their health and their businesses?
Well, I'm watching an insane amount of stuff because there is currently an insane amount of stuff happening and so many things are interesting. What's very interesting for me, I wasn't a big fan back then, but I'm getting more and more interested in the topic around peptides. So this is something that's pretty interesting to me. Of course, what I always knew about the newest diagnostics and wearable devices because I think that's the starting point and that's the most important point for me. First, understand how can I measure things and in the best way continuously. So everything that's happening there, from also patents that, for example, Apple filed since years around non-invasive glucose monitoring, because already Steve Jobs back then started to file the first patents for this. This is super interesting for me. So I'm there definitely interested from the tech side. And on the other side, I'm also very interested to see what goes beyond basics because we all know that the basics need to be in place. That's the most important stuff. Yeah, I would say apps that help you to, I don't know, stick to routines or so. Of course, they are super important, but this is something that doesn't really excite me. For me, it's more like the stuff that's happening when we also think about even going the way to cryotherapy and tapping that space. And right now, I had a really interesting conversation. I think it was 2 months ago with Christian Angermeyer about longevity velocity. So when will we reach the point where we slower or we reduce the age to the point where we can slow or stop aging. And this, of course, everything that's in that area is for me absolutely exciting because I think that we will reach the point where we can slow down aging significantly super soon, like, and with super soon for longevity, so I think around like 20 years, and we will get there. And the interesting thing is just like, how will this look like? Because in the beginning it will be super expensive and only people with a lot of money will be able to afford it. But I would say this is the most important stuff that I'm watching. And next to that, and also peptides are definitely an example that is not in the space that I'm watching most, because what I'm watching most is more the diagnostics part and more the tech side. I'm not watching biopharmaceuticals that much like I watch other spaces, because I think in the other spaces there are the things that will have the impact more soon. And if you look into that space from an entrepreneurial perspective, I think that's pretty hard to I think I would not feel myself in a state where I would say I know which space to watch. But of course, like, science-based supplementation and evidence-based supplementation is a big space. I'm also in, because right now we have the wide west and it will change towards being more evidence and science-based, and I'm really looking forward to that.
What a great answer. I have one more question for you for today, and that is, what is one book, tool, or practice that has had a profound impact on your life recently?
Well, that's a good question. I think when it comes to practice, I think it's, yeah, just realizing how important rest is. I would say this is something that I always neglected, and I realized how much more power I have if I have rest. And the book, there are so many good books, and I'm currently reading a book from a friend. It's a German book. It's like one of my mentors back then, who realized just what is important in life and what makes the difference in life. And then what really changed a lot and brought together like a real, like, I would say, like a change in my perspective on life was The Seven Spiritual Laws of Success by Deepak Chopra. I read that, I think, probably 4 years ago. And since then, I read it 3 times. This is definitely a profound impact that this book made.
Thank you so much. And that brings us to the close of this powerful episode with Leonard Rinser, a true systems thinker who's not only changing the way we approach wellness, but also walking the talk every step of the way. From building better tech for diabetes care to redefining longevity through the art of health. Leo reminds us that sustainable health isn't a trend, it is the shift that we need. Leo, thank you so much for your insight and your authenticity and your relentless drive to make health more human, more scalable, and more inspiring. If there's any final thoughts you would like to share?
Maybe, first of all, thank you so much for the invite and also the great questions. I really, really enjoyed the conversation. And regarding one thing, it's pretty short. Try to find your love for health. And the most important thing, do it one step at a time, because otherwise you will not find love with health.
If this episode gave you, the listener, a new lens on life, on health, entrepreneurship, or performance, don't forget to follow the show, leave a review, and share the episode with someone who's ready to rethink the system. Until next time, stay curious, stay bold, and stay well.